And don't forget that it was in this same Senate that the Minimum Wage Act, the Senate had to be involved in negotiations for the Minimum Wage Act of 70,000. We all know that 30,000 naira take home was even the 70,000 cannot even fend for the average family in a month, if we must be realistic. But you saw the speed at which the Senate passed the Minimum Wage Act. And you can also talk about the judicial salary that was reviewed to 300%. That was also an act. Not to talk of the fact that judges are now allowed to retire by 70. Yes, I understand where you're coming from that question, but it's cooperation that usually comes in from the executive. The executive bills are no more than 16. Do you understand? Okay. But the bills that have been passed by this Senate are over 50. Another 25 have been assented to by Mr. President. Okay. Like I said, all that will be reeled out on the 13th of June, and you'll be amazed at what Senator
on the actual anniversary.
Will be reeling out, yes.
Okay. Yes. You mentioned now in passing that, you know, take a look at the minimum wage, you know, revision bill. And, you know, you mentioned the fact that, look, when it was 30, it was impossible. Even now that it is 70, well, you just said it. It hardly does what it was intended to do. So do you have an inkling into why, having said what you said, and quite frankly, you spoke the truth, just about everybody in the country knows it, that they didn't shoot for more. Yes, they are not labor. You can say it is a division of labor. Labor has its own to-do, it has its own to-do. The fact that most of us know that 70,000 naira, especially for a family, you know, or even if it's a family of one or two, hardly suffices. What do you think is going on where we couldn't sort of put that as a benchmark, underline that fact that we are not able to do as much as we want to do? And, you know, there was a time they were speaking about 100.
Well, you see, we have to be realistic. There are even some state governments that are not still paying the 70,000. I think it is criminal for any state government not to pay that 70,000. We are all realistic of the situation we have found ourselves in the country right now. You see, the government of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took a huge risk. The huge risk was that on the first day he came into power, he removed petroleum subsidy, which was a huge monster that had been eating into our future. And besides that, the government of Buhari did not even provide for subsidy. So he didn't even have a choice, even though some people said, oh, he could have come by way of supplementary budget to the incoming National Assembly and they would have walked a way around it. But he was bold enough. This was a decision that some even military governments did not take. And there we had two-pronged approaches. One, he removed subsidy. The Naira exchange was left to be determined by the variances of the market forces. And so we were going through very serious economic crisis where fuel was almost getting to 1,000 naira a litre. And so it was only natural that the 30,000 naira minimum wage became unrealistic, especially the state governments, which had now benefited from the removal of fuel subsidy. They were earning a whole lot more than they were earning before because the exchange rates and removal of subsidy meant more income. But the federal government was meant to bear the brunt. And so the federal government said, look, we're going to lead by example. We're going to increase minimum wage to 70,000 naira, which they actually did. And you can imagine the negotiations, like you rightly said. In fact, the Labour said 600 and something thousand until they got to 100,000 before they eventually got to a realistic figure of 70,000 naira. But if you look at the 70,000 naira, it was about 2-3 weeks of negotiations before it was passed into law. And what people don't know is that the Minimum Wage Act is a law. If you pay anything less than that, you have violated the law. And so it beats my imagination that some state governments are still contemplating that. It doesn't even only go to civil servants. We're looking at the private sector, and we're looking at other departments that exploits people by saying, instead of having workers confirmed, they have this casual labor system that they can hide under and continue to pay paltry amounts of 30,000, 25,000, and you expect that there should be no crime in the society. So I think for now, the 70,000 is a stepping stone, but like you have also pointed out, it will still call for more revision. And that's why the tax reform bill is very key, because the tax reform bill, first of all, puts the people who are earning 70,000 naira now, they exempt them from paying tax. But more importantly, it's going to show up the revenue of the country in terms of funds that are being generated, IGR. We're not earning what we're supposed to earn in agriculture and in mining. We must face realities. The agricultural sector is bedeviled with the farmer headers crisis. And even Benue, that is supposed to be our food basket, you can see the crisis that is going on there now, and Plateau too. So by the time the president signs in the tax reform bill into law, I believe that when those funds, the IGR increases, we will have a reason to also maybe ask that the wages for the labor unions to be adjusted. Because if you look at the, what do they call it? If you look at the budget, for example, the budget clearly says that we are on 54.9 trillion, which is about 55 trillion.